Thank you, Deeproy Clywyd. The Welsh Conservatives welcome this bill. It takes an important step towards bringing clarity and consistency to the role of duty holders responsible for our buildings. And after the heartbreaking tragedy of the Grenfell fire, it is important that any confusion about who is responsible for identifying and managing safety risks simply cannot be allowed to continue. We also welcome the way this bill empowers residents. Too many people bought their homes without knowing the full picture on safety. At a time when Wales faces a housing crisis and when more high-rise homes will be needed to meet that demand, we must restore confidence in the market and give residents access to important information on safety and a clear path to raise concerns. These are all strong and sensible steps in the right direction. We particularly support the strengthened enforcement powers. These tools give local authorities and fire services the ability to step in when safety is at risk. If we want accountability to mean something, then it is right that our authorities must have the power to enforce it. However, with regards to enforcement, from the Stage 1 report, we can see that many stakeholders raised a similar concern. That when you divide enforcement between two bodies, as has been proposed here, there is a risk of decisions being siloed. Whilst the fire authorities clearly have the technical expertise, I think that given the challenges faced by them over the last few years, it is right that serious consideration is given as to whether they are in a position to achieve what is asked of them. Groups like the All Wales Housing Expert Panel, Local Authority Building Control, and the WLGA have all warned that without clarity on who does what, then we could end up with duplicated work, mixed messages, and uncertainty about who takes the lead. They've called for clearer coordination, regional flexibility, and a system that avoids tripping over existing laws, like the Housing Act 2004. And so this is an area that definitely needs more consideration. Fire risks and structural risks don't live in separate boxes. They're part of the same picture. And if we're going to keep people safe, then we need to manage those risks as a whole. Some have pointed to the approach in England, where one unified regulator handles everything, and suggestions have been made that Wales takes a similar path. Now, I understand, I can see the Cabinet Secretary's point of view that creating a brand new body won't magically give us more capacity. However, if we are not going to build a new structure, then we need to be very clear and introduce reliable mechanisms that show exactly how enforcement works and how our organisations will carry out their duties in practice. I have also noted the warning from the WLGA. They have said plainly that local authorities shouldn't be asked to take on the role of the Building Safety Authority. They are already stretched, facing limited technical expertise and workforce challenges, and therefore will struggle with these new responsibilities. I think, Deeproy Clywyd, that this should give us all pause for thought. Our local authorities are burdened enough, and as this bill progresses, we have to ask ourselves whether it's fair or even realistic to place even more weight on their shoulders. I would argue, Deeproy Clywyd, that the current bill means we have two public bodies, each taking on major new responsibilities, who are not fully equipped, but yet are expected to work together seamlessly. I don't see how this is going to be practical without serious changes. When it comes to workforce capacity, the concerns are real and immediate. The committee in recommendation 2 has called for a clear workforce plan. The bill can look good on paper, but it won't amount to much if we don't have trained, capable people to carry out the inspections and the enforcement. I recognise that this Parliament is nearing its final months, but this is urgent. Without that workforce foundation, the whole intention behind this bill could struggle before it even gets off the ground. Several groups have also questioned whether it's proportionate to include Category 3 buildings, those under 11 metres. The committee report has said the government hasn't made a convincing case. The government really must answer that point. Category 3 buildings are widely seen as low risk, and applying a high intensity safety regime designed for much taller buildings means more paperwork, more assessments, and more burdens that may not be needed. I fear that piling on this complexity could push developers away from building these homes, and that's the opposite of what's intended. The bill also leans heavily on secondary legislation and guidance, much of which hasn't even been written yet. I think the stakeholders have been clear. The system has to work in the real world, not just in theory. Leaving too many details for later creates uncertainty, and uncertainty slows the very improvements we are trying to deliver. The new system must line up with existing laws like the Renting Homes Wales Act and the Ombudsman's frameworks. If we don't get that alignment right, we risk creating a confusing maze of overlapping rules that help no one. Finally, I want to speak to the slow pace of fixing historic defects. This is one of the most serious issues, and the bill as it stands does not fully resolve it. Too many residents have been unable to move or sell their homes because remedial work has taken far too long. It has caused stress, anxiety, and real hardship. We need enforceable deadlines and real consequences for developers who drag their feet. I fully support that, and I hope we will see firm proposals brought forward. My group and I support the general principles of this bill, but as we have outlined, there are still big, important areas that need addressing. Thank you.